The Tom Flowers Cricket Coaching Podcast, brought to you by Bespoke Cricket, Rutland's premium cricket brand. For the best bats, pads and gloves, check out bespoke-cricket.co.uk. Here's what's coming up on the podcast.
There's got to be some accountability, and I think as an England fan, you struggle to see where that accountability is coming from, because no one seems to be taking responsibility for the complete debacle that happened down under this winter. The common theme is the same thing, that the communication between the in crowd and the out crowd, or those who are in the setup and who aren't, or who are in and those on the periphery, is nothing short of horrendous. I still come back to the fact that there is a major fundamental flaw between the major counties and the minor counties, and as I've said, squad of 18 or squad of 24, when you make your cut of down to 14 or whatever, where do these 8 to 10 players go? If anyone here listens to this, they'll have an opinion on that, and it'll probably come back on me. Tom, you can't say that, or what do you mean by that? It's black and white. For me, if you're employed full time in a role like that, where you are working with youngsters in their formative key years, then the absolute key time for me is 6 to 8 weeks till the season. If you are not around and you're not doing your job at that point, to me, there's questions that have to be asked.
Now, on with the podcast.
Hello and welcome to a pre-season special of the TFCC podcast with me, Tom Flowers, ECB Level 4 coach and director of the TFCC Coaching Group Limited. Okay guys, so it's been a while since I've been on the podcast. I thought I'd just jump on before the season starts, just to go through a few things that are in the game at the moment, give you a few ideas about your own pre-season prep. Hopefully touch on the review from the ECB, now it's come out on the Ashes debacle that was, and hopefully cover a few more things about pathway players this time of year and what it is that they've been doing over the winter and where they go from here. So without further ado, let's get on with the podcast. Okay, so 27th of March today, and on the back of a very, very interesting week in which Rob Key has come out and said from the ECB's part that there'll be no internal changes. That means himself, Stokes as captain, and most probably surprising of all, McCullum as coach have kept their places within the structure and the setup. And I kind of think and feel that the lip service Key's given, if you've seen the interview with Nasser and Atherton, Key does sort of fail to address the key issues and the fundamental problems. Nasser asked a great question at one point. If you're saying that things need to change, but you're happy with the culture and the approach of the coach, how can you expect a coach to change what his fundamental beliefs are? And I think that was the sort of summary I took away from the interview. It was a great question from Nasser, and I don't really see what Key can possibly say to that. This idea that we can rebuild, and that a lot of it was down to the preparation, and that things weren't right, and they'd already started the review by the Perth test, I find amazing. Is that they were already expecting the backlash that came and the inevitable to potentially unfold. I think Luke Wright's gone head of selectors, so for him to be made sort of the only scapegoat, I find amazing. I also think that David Saker, who was, as we all know, employed via text message 6 weeks before the Ashes series started, when we had no bowling coach, and I made it quite clear on a social media post that I put out that this disjointedness between the England team and the county game, how on earth can we have a bowling coach who has not watched any county cricket in 2025, never mind be working with and selecting bowlers from that? I find that just completely bizarre. And I also find that that Key alluding to the two people, Troy Cooley, he may well bring in, and looking to get batting coach specialists, I do feel that it's making Saker and Trescothick, to an extent, as batting and bowling coaches, a bit of scapegoats, because I don't really see they aren't responsible for employing themselves. They're brought in to do a job, And I do find it difficult that it does seem from the outside looking that the only major changes isn't the captain, isn't the coach, isn't your head man at the ECB, isn't even Richard Gold, who's above that, and his interview is something else, to be honest. I mean, it wouldn't have looked out of place on Question Time. And to be honest, I should think he may well be running for one of the political parties, having listened to the spiel that he came out with. But I do feel that it's an amazing situation that we've got to, that it looks as if Luke Wright as a selector, and from what he's saying there, Trescothick and Saker may be the fall guys, which I find difficult to understand. But there we go. Clearly, some of the key fundamental issues that we all have seen, which is the inability to read a game, the inability to take time out of a game, and by that I mean back for longer periods, give bowlers a longer rest. The complete nonsensical selection of a bowling unit that we called before the series even started. The chances of Wood, Archer, Carse, these guys all finishing that series. Atkinson, 3 out the 4 of them have had chronic injury problems throughout their careers, and I think it's nothing short of deluded the fact that we thought that that quartet would get us through that series. To then the debacle of the Jack situation with the spinner, not even having a holding spinner who we're confident in, which Bashir well could have done. Jack Leach, I have no doubt, could have done. Liam Dawson could have done. And the time that buys the bowling unit to then recover and rest, so that you're not going seam from one end from the next, from the X to the next. It's no use just saying, well, the matchup against Australia, they're playing 4 seamers, because actually the body compositions, the injury history of that bowling quartet from the Aussies was completely different to what the English were looking at. And I think finally the summary of the preparation, the idea that we can go into, I think that the fundamental flaw was an administrative one, which is that they failed to get the Perth ground booked, or either in time, or there was an administrative error whereby that didn't happen, and therefore ultimately I think the England team would have wanted that. They couldn't get it, and they had a practice game at Lilac Hill where the bounce was knee high for the whole game and bared no resemblance. So it would be like a Premier League side going into the first fixture of the season having played only inter-club games and not against oppositions in pre-season friendlies. I find it completely bizarre. But again, that is the underwriting factor of this. You hear it called a cult, you hear it called the environment, whatever you want to call it, and this inability to listen to anything from the outside, even when everyone seems to be saying the same thing. Not everyone can be wrong, and we then go down a slightly predictable route of the series having gone the way it did, and then the inquest that follows. And the only thing that's not gone down the predictable route, conveniently, which kind of fits the narrative, is that the quote is, we often as management, we often make decisions as the management, I believe something along the lines of this, don't quote me word for word, reactively, and we get rid of those who have built us to a stage that we're at, and the first sign of failure, the managers go, or the coaches go, etc., and we don't give them chance to improve and respond and react. And the only problem with that approach is this is elite level, high end, top of the tree sport. If England crash out of a World Cup at the group stages in football, for example, or lose to a supposed minnow in a quarter-final of a Euros comp, 9 times out of 10 the manager will go if we're not seeing progress at that tournament or at that competition. And unfortunately, I don't think with McCullum it's his first real high-profile coaching job, as we all know, and I don't think that's the space or the environment to be learning. I think that learning needs to be done elsewhere. And, you look at the likes of Paul Farbrace, you look at the likes of Peter Moores, Duncan Fletcher, these guys that learnt their trade outside of the England team. There seems this acceptance, and we see it on the field with Jacob Bethel. Let's learn on the job as opposed to apply your trade, learn your trade. And look, there is space for both. I think there's a balance, but ultimately there's got to be some accountability. And I think as an England fan, you struggle to see where that accountability is coming from. Because no one seems to be taking responsibility for the complete debacle that happened down under this winter. So we could talk a long while about it. What I would say is I've kept the news on this week, different things. I've heard Livingston talking about his experiences. I've heard Dom Best talking about his experiences. I've heard a quote from Johnny Bairstow. I've heard a quote from Chris Wokes. Good servants of England there, the list of people that I've just been through. And the common theme is the same thing. Ben Folkes as well. The common theme is the same thing, that the communication between the in crowd and the out crowd, or those who are in the setup and who aren't, or who are in and those are on the periphery, is nothing short of horrendous. And to me, that is just not good enough. I've sat through my ECB courses, level 3, level 4. I have been in, high-end communication with certain individuals within the ECB, having been, attended various seminars, lectures, etc. On my badges, and that is not the traits of a high-performance environment where a fundamental is quality, first-class communication. And I do question, McCullum not having come through the coaching system with the ECB, with his qualifications, etc., a bit like a football manager not doing his UEFA licence, or coming in from abroad and not knowing the league. I do question if, because of his undoubted playing prowess, has he kind of been allowed to skip the other side to managing a high-performance environment, which is the softer skills, managing individuals, flexing his own style to get the best out of players, letting individuals know what it is they need to do to get back in if they've been dropped, and communicating this clearly. You're hearing things about Harry Brook texting Livingston saying he's dropped. I mean, that should not be, at the age of Harry Brook, A, that I don't think should be on him at his age, and I think B, to do it over text, who is advising that, who is allowing that, and how is that still being able to happen? So I don't think there's any smoke without fire. I think there's a respected group of players there who are all saying similar things. Ollie Robinson, I believe, has come out with something today. Again, that's going to create a divisive opinion because of the view on him anyway, but a lot of players are saying similar sort of things. And I don't think that this idea of I don't think the group are doing themselves any favours with the us and them that they've created between the county game and the test game. You've only got to look at what, I was saying this to somebody the other day, what Thomas Tuchel has done with the England side, and the way he has created a completely transparent environment. That transparent that us as fans see exactly what's going on, which is if you don't perform in the England side, you are not untouchable, and there is a pressure on you to perform. It's also an environment where he is rewarding the next level beneath that if you perform in that environment, then you are going to get opportunities. He's also saying that if you choose to play for a club where you're not getting regular opportunities, you can't expect to be playing regularly for England. And I think the messages he's sending out, if I put in my notes for my podcast today, what can the England team learn from Thomas Tuchel? And I do think that the way he approaches with players, I was listening to TalkSport 2 days ago, and they were saying that Tuchel has a conversation with every player, fringe or non-fringe, in the squad, and says, look, this is the role that we want you to do. You're up against X, Y, Z, and that's complete transparency. The players know what they need to do. They know the pressure's on. They know they're not untouchable. They know that they're not at complete non-risk of being dropped. And I think that that's a healthy, transparent environment that surely lends itself to high performance and for players to thrive. Also, if they get dropped, knowing there's a re-entry passage and a transition back into the side, and they're not just going to be binned off and forgotten about. And it's hard when you hear these comments about it's a cult, it's a closed shop, it's an elitist environment. It's hard not to buy into that idea when you're hearing the constant same drums being banged all the while. From this time, not just from the outside looking in, but from players who have been inside that environment and are now saying the same things. So yeah, that's my take on the current situation. Be keen to get anyone's views on that. If they want to comment or drop us a line, please feel free. So yeah, next thing I've got written down is sort of pre-season, where we're at with everything at the moment. So a lot of players now are ramping up their preparations. You'll see with the recent Middle East problems in Dubai, lots of players have had to change their plans and etc. etc. And one of the places that they've gone to is Desert Springs, and that is a place that we've been managed to tour for the last 3 or 4 years, and pre-COVID as well. It's a fantastic facility. I'm pleased it's getting the recognition and usage that it deserves now. As the only ICC approved grass facility in mainland Europe, I do think that it's getting the recognition, as I say, that it does deserve. It was great to see Jimmy Anderson over there, for example, this week with Lancashire, and clearly that resort is going from strength to strength. So well done to all the team over there, and we're looking forward to coming back in October with our latest 2 squads, and all the players I know are looking forward to that as well. So great to see that. Whilst what's going on in the Middle East is horrendous, and for Dubai cricket it's not great, it's good to see a positive that's come out of that the Desert Springs Resort has got the quality of cricket and pre-season they deserve. So that's great to see. Just a few side notes I've made on today's podcast. We've been doing a bit of work recently with our players, looking at what we call match mindset. So we're trying to transition from winter coaching and a real heavy technical work, where we're trying to get key fundamental changes into that sort of transition period, where we're trying to get more into what we call match mindset. So match mindset for me is more about thinking about outcomes. For example, if you're batting, where the ball's going. If you're bowling, can you get the batters to hit in certain areas only, or prevent them from hitting certain areas? Can you make sure you're running in and hitting the pitch hard? Can you make sure that your length is slightly fuller than it needs to be indoors, so that when you make the transition to outside, you don't lose your bit you might get off the pitch or in the air? Batting wise, again, just looking at rhythm. Can players get into their match rhythm? Are they resetting between balls? I really hate to see the sort of 60-second over indoors, where that, unless it's against spin, that's not the reality. In 4 weeks' time, the guys are going to have to learn to, be at peace and at one with their own thoughts and their own processes in between balls in a game. And I'm really big on that giving the players the chance to just go through the reset process and really make sure that they're happy before they take guard and face the ball to make a clear positive decision. So they're sort of things we've been doing indoors at the moment. From TFCC, we've got our residential program starting on Sunday, which we're excited about. It's a fantastic program where I can bring together my most experienced coaching team from all different environments, backgrounds, etc. Ex-first class cricketers, 100 first class matches, some of them from all departments, etc., and covering all bases. And it's such an exciting couple of weeks that we deliver, because we are charged, or tasked if you like, with putting the icing on the cake with some of these players, where they might not have had the progress they want over the winter, or achieved the goals they want, or even had the quality of practice they've been looking for. We can really make a huge difference during that period. So it gets my juices going. I'm really excited when this period comes around, and I'm excited to see. I know we've got a high number of county age group players already signed up. I was speaking to one lad's parent yesterday, Essex under 15 batter keeper, and really looking at him having a big pre-season with us. So it's great that we can continue to put on our pre-season residentials, and that parents and players are supporting them to allow us to do so. So I just want to put on record a big thank you for that. And again, a lot of that will be looking at the way players are preparing, recovering, their mindset, their game plans, their thought processes, their field placings, their angles, all the kinds of things that actually they've probably had 6 months off doing, just getting them back to that match sharpness. So looking forward to that and getting some overs, miles in the legs, and hopefully some time out in the middle. So great stuff. Just a couple of things I want to come back to before we wrap up today. Last year, I spoke about the one of the main flaws of the county age group system being that players can be part of a main first-class county squad. They can be let go in February, and then they're not particularly signposted well for that coming season. And it's great to see that I've had a couple of lads who got let go out the pathway last season who have re-entered a pathway this year at minor counties. So, I mean, it's great to see that they've not given up, and that's not knocked them too far with their development. I still come back to the fact that there is a major fundamental flaw between the major counties and the minor counties. And as I've said, squad of 18 or squad of 24, when you make your cut of down to 14 or whatever, where do these 8 to 10 players go? And if you leave it too late to February, you've got your main county, you've got your fringe players, and you've got your minor county players. Now, if you look at that as an A, B and C team, for me, where are your B team players going? Well, they're not getting any representative cricket unless they know a loophole or they've been fast-tracked into a minor county side. It's really tough. And I think that, again, I keep banging the drum on this, but I do think that the setup and the system needs to take action, take charge on this. Finally, just a few observations. I've kept in touch with a couple of people, seeing what's going on pre-seasons and what's going on at this time of year, and just disappointing at times to find out at some of the sort of county academies you've got academy directors who aren't present and correct for the whole of the winter pre-season period. Now, I understand that there are financial implications, chances to go and earn more money, doing contractor jobs elsewhere, etc. But it kind of hurts me a little bit having gone through that system and having my fundamental beliefs of how I think that role should be done. Just hearing that academy head coaches are being allowed during sort of months of February and March to go away for 2 weeks on tours, etc., when that is the absolute key time as a player. You need your academy director to be mentoring, looking after working with you, and really seeing you through that final part of the winter practice. So, look, no doubt, if anyone here listens to this, they'll have an opinion on that, and it'll probably come back on me. Tom, you can't say that, or what do you mean by that? It's black and white. For me, if you're employed full-time in a role like that, where you are working with youngsters in their formative key years, then the absolute key time for me is 6 to 8 weeks till the season. If you are not around and you're not doing your job at that point, to me, there's questions that have to be asked. So I feel quite strongly about that, and I picked that up a few weeks ago. So I just wanted to share that with people. It's not being controversial. It's just saying things as I see them, which I think others will maybe not even spot, but they will definitely shy away from saying. And fortunately, I'm in a position where I'm, fiercely independent, so to speak, where I can have these opinions, and I can, with my level of qualification, back them up as well. So that kind of validates them. Not saying I'm right, but it allows me to have an opinion on such things. Great stuff. Look, guys, I'm going to leave you with a couple of top tips, I guess, before I go, just seeing you into the pre-season. Number one, it's understanding as a batter that batting will get easier the longer you bat. This time of year, when you're batting in April next month, just try and flip the perspective. Bowlers are expected to get you out. That is their job. That is what they do. There's as much, if not more, pressure on them than there is on you to score runs. And when you can accept that and flip that mindset, I find it's really helpful and useful with the players that we work with. Bowling wise, I'd say the big thing for me, for the youngsters going out there, is make sure you've done your prep, make sure you get your prep done away from the sessions, get the overs in your legs, etc. But really try and be astute and show that attention to detail in your early season. So working out what lengths you need to bowl, looking at the wicket, the pace of the wicket, your field settings and how you can restrict whilst building pressure, and just finding specific lengths for different wickets. I think at this time of year you see quite a spectrum of wickets that you're going to be playing on. So it's try and talk to your senior pros in the club, or if parents are listening, get them to get around the adults or the more experienced players in the side. Ask your coaches what you think a good length for this wicket would be. And just try and not put too much pressure on yourselves. You know, the measure of a good pre-season / early season is spending as much time out in the middle as possible, and often that can be facing numbers of balls rather than scoring numbers of runs. And for bowlers, it's about finding that rhythm and working out, you know, the lengths and the lengths you got to hit that allow you to still threaten and take wickets, but at the same time allow you to get to that point where you've got your rhythm, so you can hit your strides early season. So, look, guys, always a pleasure. Hope you've enjoyed today's special pre-season episode with me, Tom Flowers. As ever, if you can like, subscribe, and add any comments, I'd be grateful and willing to hear them. So, go well, and I'll be back soon for your next podcast with me, Tom Flowers. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to leave us a review and follow us so you never miss an episode.